I decided that, it's either make a choice now, stay shipping, only had at that point maybe 10 more years, give or take, before an actual true vested retirement within the union, or make a switch to landside, which is never an easy transition.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert, and today's guest is a seasoned facilities and operations leader who has built his career at the intersection of engineering, real estate, and life sciences infrastructure. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because he brings a rare blend of technical expertise and large-scale project leadership, someone who understands not just how facilities run, but how they evolve to support innovation and growth. He's a strategic operator focused on sustainability, compliance, and delivering complex projects at scale. With experience spanning organizations like Boston Scientific, Organogenesis, and now serving as Executive Director of Facilities Services at Alexandria Real Estate Equities, he has led major capital improvements, managed budgets, and supported high-performance environments across the life sciences sector. Paul Tedesco, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jay, thank you for having me. Much
Absolutely. Thanks for investing some time today with us, Paul.
Of course.
Excited to get into, we're really going to focus on your journey because it's an interesting one. You got a good story and a lot of experience.
Certainly has been.
Let's see. Well, let me start with this, right? As you're probably familiar, open the show with the same question every single time. And that question is, Paul, given all your experience, and before we get into the depths of your journey, what's been your biggest lesson learned throughout that journey?
It's hard to pinpoint an exact lesson learned, so to speak, because there's been a lot of them. As far as something that I can think of more recently as opposed to the past, I would say that actually, generally speaking here, I would say that almost every day is a good lesson learned because in this world that we're living in currently, especially in this market, every day is a different challenge, right? Especially in the facilities world. You know that as well as I do, Jay. I'm sure you hear from a lot of other facilities managers, directors, et cetera. But to pinpoint something in particular, given where we are currently in this market and with our business being tenants and tenant satisfaction, the more new tenants that are moving into the spaces that we've built for them, one in particular actually was a little bit more of a challenge just because they weren't getting some of the satisfaction they should have gotten early on through their construction, which is totally understandable. So we made a point, myself, my team, to make sure that we were there every day, answering anything from a cold call to the paint wasn't right on the walls to, the lighting wasn't right or whatever it may be to make sure that they were comfortable. And that's, again, that's one particular tenant, but I would say that generally speaking, that's our job overall in facilities here. But we also make sure that we are also doing the right thing on our side to make sure that we continue to, have a balanced budget, make sure that we are up to date with our HVAC and our MEP needs. And I guess, like I said, generally speaking, it's not anything particularly pinpoint, but I can tell you more recently, that particular tenant who just moved in was definitely a little bit more challenging given the current market conditions. So we just made sure that we were there every day to make sure that we were servicing them properly. So
that absolutely resonates and that lands, Paul, because it's like it has come up in different iterations. Of course, tenant satisfaction, right? Like we're in service of the tenants, really, right? They're our clients. So
that's what we have for you.
Yeah, it sounds like, you guys as a team just really stepped up customer service in a situation that,
our goal is to make sure they stay here, right? So,
yeah.
So in the end, we want to make sure they're here for the long term and they're staying with us and they're not going outside of our portfolio and saying, we could go somewhere else where we're paying less money and we get maybe better service. I highly doubt that, but that's,
right.
That's what we have for, and that's what we have for in facilities anyways.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Um, so I mentioned your journey, and I want to let's dig in, right? So I know you've had what 11. You started with 11 years in marine engineering. Can we just start there and tell us about that?
Yeah, so I graduated from Mass Maritime in 2004 with a marine engineering degree, and I had the mindset coming out of Mass Maritime that, hey, I went here to get a degree in marine engineering. I'm going to ship out. I'm going to be on a ship. I'm going to be a marine engineer. I'm going to be a chief engineer. Work my way all the way to the top, and I had that goal in my mind from the onset. And I went through many years, I should back up a little bit. I was in MEBA, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, a union nationwide. Starting at the age I was at a younger age, as a third engineer on a ship is never easy in a union. You got to really earn your keep. You got to make sure that you are earning your seniority. Takes many years to do that. I shipped out of different union halls across the country, sleeping in hotel rooms for weeks at a time, trying to get a job off the shipping board. Never easy. Spent a lot of money just between flights and living in those hotel rooms and doing night work on different various ships when they were in port. I'd come on just to relieve the engineer that was on watch, make a little bit of money just to be able to stay in that hotel room until something actually opened up. And that went on for many years until I started really getting into more permanent positions, we'll say, within the union, which again was not an easy road to get there. But as I worked my way up, I want to say I was about 6, maybe 7 years into it, maybe even 8 at this point. I don't recall, before I started selling as a first engineer and was able to land my first permanent role as a first engineer with Maersk Lines Limited. Going overseas to the furthest I had gone was all the way over to India. But it was India, back to the Middle East, and back over to New York and down the coast. But it was never easy going over there, just given, a couple reasons. One was the heat was always difficult in the engine room.
Mm-hmm.
Lost a lot of weight, stayed in shape, but it was definitely not easy. Very physical work. And then when you sell a first engineer and you're in charge of that engine room, and you got a crew of guys underneath you that are also, some of them cooperative, some of them aren't, and it makes it very difficult because they can't just go somewhere else. You're stuck with them. So it really depended on the crew I was getting on a rotating schedule. I had couple very good chief engineers who were great mentors too. And I continued doing it as long as I could. I got to a point where, I got married, had 2 young kids, a boy and a girl, Michael and Lily, the most important thing in my life.
Awesome.
And then it was about 2015 when it came to a head for me between both kids being very young. I decided that, it's either make a choice now, stay shipping. Only had at that point maybe 10 more years, give or take, before an actual true vested retirement within the union, or make a switch to landside, which is never an easy transition. I decided to go with the choice to go landside. I was kind of, at that point, I was kind of tapped out, we'll say, both mentally and physically, between the family, between the work itself. Granted, I will say this to this day, like it did carve out who I am. It did make me a better person overall. Definitely made me more of a detailed oriented, organized, methodical thinker for sure, which is, I've definitely carried that trait from my shipping days to where I am now. But my first stop when I actually made the transition to land was in a power plant. I had a couple connections through my colleagues, Mass Maritime. Well, I should say alumni, Mass Maritime.
Can I ask, Paul, could I ask you about that real quick? So recently, I think I shared with you, and I'm sure you're aware, we had a whole 4-week series with Mass Maritime Academy. And then it went from the cadets to the leadership to graduates, and you being a grad and talking about this right now in such depth. Could you just touch on MMA for a moment? Like how well did it set you up for, getting out there in the world?
Yeah, great question, Jay. MMA, I would say for me, the 4 years I were there were fantastic. I made some of the best friends to this day. I'm still in touch with high school friends, for example. Not so much, believe it or not. You all kind of get distant from each other with high school. Mass Maritime is a whole different aspect, a whole different dynamic. You make friends for life there. And it becomes an amazing network to be a part of. So whether it was in the shipping part of it as that network to the facility side of it, everybody's very close just from going there. Now, as far as setting me up, by the time I graduated, everybody goes through the 4 years. You definitely learn to be structured there and organize, or however you want to. It's all in how you put it in, how what your input is to it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say
Sure.
that. But I would never say that you're definitely set up when you graduate to know like what's out there in the real world, especially on the shipping side of it, because there's so many different walks of life that you run into when you're shipping out people across the country, people from around the world, right? So I wouldn't say necessarily set you up for that. You kind of just find it out as you move along.
That's
But
great. That
it
makes sense.
definitely created a network, an alumni network that, like, no matter if you're coming out of school there now, Mass Maritime, or if you're there currently, or you're coming out, or you just got out a few years, graduated a few years ago, that network is always there forever, and it's a very strong network throughout the entire industry for sure. So
I've come to learn that quite intimately recently. It's amazing the strength and the reach of the network, and it's not a large school either, so it's really impressive. Like I think you're probably close to the 25th, or maybe I should know the number, 30th MMA grad we've had on the show.
okay,
Like
yeah,
just think
yeah,
about that
I
alone,
know.
right?
No,
That's a
yeah,
pretty high percentage for
there it is. Yeah, yeah.
so awesome, man. You mentioned something else before we move on to the power plant. If I could, you said, look, you're in the engine room. You have who you have. Some of them are really good, and others might be a challenge. So, how did you? And you can't just replace them. They're on the ship with you. So, how did you work with? Like, could you give any advice on how you actually navigated that when they were
Yeah, yeah,
challenged?
sure. You had to learn to deal with those personalities, right? There's always somebody that's going to be challenging one way or the other. It doesn't matter what job you're doing, right? There's always somebody there, for the most part. On a ship, that tends to be a little bit more. I don't know if it's just the way that the industry is, or just the type of personality that you're dealing with for who they are for being on a ship, or an engineer, marine engineer, or even an unlicensed one,
Hmm.
unlicensed personnel, I should say, versus licensed officer, like I was. Um, you gotta have a little bit more thicker skin, we'll say, and you gotta
Hmm.
be able to
Yeah.
learn how to manage those personalities without being too rough. Because you can also get no performance out of anybody too if you go take that a little bit too far, even when you're in a managerial position, which was also important for me to learn that aspect of being a manager to where it is now too. So I would say, yeah, you just gotta learn to who those people are. They're humans too, right? You got to make sure that you're not just treating them badly just because of their attitude, but there is ways of getting to people in different manners, um, and just making sure that you're not going overboard with them. So
Yeah.
I would say for the most part, most of the crew I always had was good. Some like I said, some better than others, but the other day I didn't have too many numbers that stick on my head that were like just like, "Hey, I'm here collecting the paycheck, and I just don't care what I do," even with some different mentalities. But yeah, there were challenges for sure, and there were times too where we had to actually, I did say you're stuck with them. There was a case. I'm not gonna get into all the details, but there was a case we actually had to have somebody removed from the ship. But they were a very extreme person. They took extreme measures that just were not tolerable. So they
Mm.
were able at one of the ports overseas to there are rules and regulations that still abide even, on a ship with a union that you can still follow to make sure that if they are of some sort of a threat or just threatening nature, that they can be removed, uh,
Yeah.
and sent home without any pay. So,
Wow.
but yeah, they had a couple of those, but it was very few and far between. So,
No, that's great. Thanks for touching back on that because yeah, and like I like how you pointed out you had to learn as a manager. Or at least what I heard was how do you deal with that? They are humans. You can't go too far because then you might get nothing out of them.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yep.
All right. Awesome. Thanks. You were about to talk about your journey extending to power plants. I think.
Yeah, yeah. So how I got into the power plant side of it was, again, going back to the Maritime Network.
Mm-hmm.
Former classmate of mine was already at a power plant out in Bellingham. He had reached out to me when I was on the ship and said that
Mm-hmm.
there was an opening. He had just moved into a management role. He said all I had to do was go get my stationary license, which was at the time I did not have a second class, a second fireman. He said you can apply, interview, and then once if you do get the job, you'll have to get that. That's an obligation just to be able to work at the plant, but they will
Mhm.
hire you without it, which is usually a state. It's a state. What's it called? The Department of Public Safety. It is a requirement that you do have to have a license to work in a power plant of a certain horsepower.
Okay.
But they allowed us, because they didn't have anybody at the time, I kind of lucked out. They said, yeah, you can hire him, but he has to get his license within X amount of time. I believe it was 2 months, if I recall, it was 60 days. But again, going back to the network, it was important that was just good enough of a friend and alumni to make that connection and say, hey, we'll give you a chance. And that's how I got into the power plant industry, which I did that for 2 years.
Mhm.
Shift work, I found out really wasn't for me.
Mm.
I also am a very ambitious person by nature. That power plant in particular wasn't operating 24/7. It was more of a peaking power plant by that time because it was a bit of a dinosaur. But we were there, still on duty, ready to go if we were called upon to start it up or shut it down. But it just wasn't running enough, and it just for me was not. I could tell in the 2 years I was there it was not for me, I guess. I had
Yep.
more ambitions to continue in the facilities world. What it led to, though, was another connection, um, not only through the Mass Maritime Network, but also an outside connection of the Mass Maritime Network via the Mass Maritime Network
Wow.
that we're looking at the time. This is now going forward, the Boston Scientific, who was looking
Mhm.
for at the times a particular, con- not a consultant, but I was more of a contractor, um, to run they had a combined heat and power plant out in Marlboro at the headquarters of Boston Scientific. And I
Sure.
had a lot of experience because it was a reciprocating CHP, so it was a diesel engine. I had all my experience in diesel when I was shipping out. Of course, I knew a lot about a combined cycle plant due to my power plant days, so it just kind of lined up, worked out, interviewed out there, was brought on board as a contractor or third party, and I was able to get their CHP up and running, which wasn't running for a couple of years. Was able to do that in the first, I want to say, 6 months I was there. I was able to get it up and running, monitor it, make sure it ran for the next, however many days that the remainder of that year that they needed, uh, and really kind of prove my worth on that. And then from there, I was moved into the facility side at Boston Scientific, more so like in the actual buildings, doing MEP, HVAC, maintenance. Um, and luckily, I was identified that I had a good work ethic, that I, had a good idea, a good handle on things. I was able to get promoted from there over to their warehouse in Quincy, uh,
Mhm. Sure.
where they have most people see it right from the highway there. You can see Scientific. So I was a lead engineer over at their warehouse. I did that for a few months, and then I was approached by another former Mass Maritime alumni of mine. Big shout out to him, Mr. Rob DeCoste. Most people know who he is. He was a former owner of 42 North. He probably would not be happy if I was talking about it right now because he's kind of out of the limelight at the moment, but that's okay. I'm gonna give him a shout out anyways to
You're
the work
saying it in a
him.
positive light. I'm sure he won't
And
mind.
definitely positively.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who Rob is, but he gave me an opportunity to be they had open at Organogenesis as a project engineer, which I had no experience with at all. But he said, systems, you've probably done small projects when you're shipping out, or even the power plant, or even the Boston Scientific, that you'll learn what you need to do for them on a capital project side. And I was brought on board for 3 months. It was a 3-month contract to hire as their project engineer, and then I did get hired by Organogenesis directly. They put me as a senior project manager. I was there for 2 years running capital projects. I had several in-house Organogenesis project engineers that were working for me, and then I had multiple um, consultants also, or contractors, I should say, third party, that were also project engineers, and we were running all the capital projects throughout the facility. We were putting in new boilers, new chiller plant, um, electrical infrastructure, generators, anything they needed to keep that 24/7 manufacturing facility running.
So that's a lot of complexity. If you don't mind, Paul, I'm going to ask you, like, what were some of the challenges with all of that going on? I'm sure the listeners are thinking, okay, I've done maybe some of that, but like, what could you shed light on that was like either an easier thing or a challenge in that environment?
The challenges there at a 24/7 manufacturing facility, GMP, is especially one like where I was. They were pretty, I want to say, kind of stuck in their ways. They've been doing things the way they've been doing for years. Um, what was challenging for me there was making the relationships I had to form with different departments and stakeholders,
Mm,
to make sure that they could gain my trust and our team's trust to be able to make those infrastructure changes that were impactful because one, they needed them just to be able to keep the building running. But two, the challenge was we can never shut down. We can't do, we can't shut off the chillers. We can't shut off, we can't stop chill water from running, for example. There's too many processes involved. You can't shut down power. We need the power 24/7 for all of our manufacturing processes. What I was able to do was bridge the gap between facilities and projects and the quality department, build excellent relationships with all those stakeholders so that they were able to buy into the trust. And it didn't happen overnight. It took me a good almost a year, I want to say, before we were able to actually, this was multiple meetings, weekly, almost daily, whatever it took to make sure they gained our trust. We had all the plans laid out. They knew what was going to happen when we shut down or made these changes to impact and how we were going to mitigate them. SOPs that went with that, whatever it may be,
hmm
to gain their trust so we can implement the changes that was for the benefit of not only their departments, the manufacturing processes, and the company itself. So
Wow.
it was very challenging. I was told when I first got there, nope, we will never shut this place down. And
Hmm.
we were over that hump in about, I want to say, 8 months to a year. So yeah.
Congrats, well done. And I just want to punctuate. I'm going to tell you what I just did. I'm drawing a picture on my notes here. And it's just this triangle, like facilities, quality, and projects. And I just wrote trust in the middle because that's what I heard,
That's
right?
what it
Like the
really
biggest
was.
thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the biggest accomplishment. You knew you must have said gain trust 5 times just now because it was like the core foundation of what I'm hearing here. And that's why
Yep.
you were able to accomplish it, obviously, with everything else you did.
Yeah, yeah, and it actually opened up the doors for, like, facilities. It was almost like at that point when I first started, there might as well have been the Grand Canyon between the different departments, facilities, quality, and was able to bring that together, and, I think they were way better off by the time I actually left there in terms of their teamwork together, for
Great
sure. I can
accomplishment.
confidently say that, yep.
Wow.
And then, I was really happy there at Organogenesis. I had a great boss. I had a great team. Everybody was fantastic together. I was very comfortable. It was closer to home as far as the commute goes.
hmm
Um, and then but it just, I was good doing all that. And then a recruiter had reached out to me about the opportunity at Alexandria, and I didn't even think that I had a shot at Jay, to be honest with you, because at this point, between the transitions I had with shipping to where I was at Organo, because of kids and a family and all that, I never went back and got a master's degree. I just didn't think I had a opportunity at it. So I actually turned it down the first time when the recruiter came knocking at my door.
Wow.
Just thinking, I don't think this is going to happen. They circled back around a week later and said, "Look, you really should think about this. This is, you got GMP experience. They're looking for it right now."
That's a compliment.
So yeah, yeah. So funny enough, I was like, all right, why not? And it just happened to be right place, right time, which I'm a true believer in at this point. In my life, I'm a true believer in that. And it just worked out. The interview process went really well. They definitely were looking for GMP because come to find out, Alexandria was in the process of a development for GMP manufacturing. So they needed somebody to kind of be the champion of that. And that was one of the reasons amongst many others. And it just worked out. And here I am today. So since then, it's been a great ride for the last 5 years. I've done a lot of different things since I've been here, and every day is something different. Every day is a new challenge, and that's what makes it fun for me. I enjoy that. It doesn't get monotonous. I love doing capital projects. I love doing development. I love doing just day-to-day facilities, working with our facilities teams, and overall making our tenants happy, like I said from the beginning, and just what, in this real estate market that we're doing, it's definitely something special. And I don't think you're going to see that really anywhere else for the different facets that we do on a day-to-day basis. So
That's great. And I'm kind of smiling here because so many people in your role and these roles say a similar thing about their jobs. They're like, look, I love it because every day when I come in, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen or what I'm going to be faced with. You have your plan, obviously, but there's always something dynamic happening.
yeah, and one thing I think I've definitely thrived off of, just generally speaking in my career, 'cause again, I can confidently say this, um, I'll like just let's take emails for a minute, right? At the level of a facilities director, you get a lot of correspondences that are all communication. Communication is everything. Well, it's
Yep.
text, phone calls, but mostly emails, right? And it's all about how you respond properly. And I am one that prides myself in responding right away. I have a hard time looking at an email and letting it sit there and taking some time. I'll take my time, methodically think like, how
Right.
can I answer this? But I will never not get back to somebody. I'll never not get back to a vendor or whoever it may be. Like I don't operate like that, and I make sure that especially when it comes to our facilities team, if they need something, they're sending me a proposal that needs to be approved or for me to review. I'll review it. If I see something in there that's not right, I'll certainly send it back to them. We'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, I would never let something just kind of manifest. I'll always be all on top of it, and make sure that our team gets what they need, our tenants get what they need, the buildings get what they need. That is just the way I am. And like I said, maybe that came from my shipping days, uh,
Mm,
or maybe it's just how I am by nature. But one way or the
sure.
other, it bothers me if I'm not on top of my job. I don't let things linger. Even when I get home from my commute and I may have a inbox of 60 emails, right?
Mhm.
Say hi to my kids, make sure I'm answering my emails, make sure I complete what I need to close out for it to not push it off for the next day.
Mhm.
And that's just the way I operate. So
You're clearly very good at what you do, and that's a great quality because that's not that common. I mean, people that are that clean on the inbox and getting back and response time and everything. So, yeah, good for you, man. I want to go back to MMA just quickly
sure.
because well, it doesn't have to be quick, but just I want to touch on it because I think you mentioned it was a bridge. That network got you all the way to, was it Organogenesis? And then it was a recruiter to Alexandria. But
Yeah.
just think for a moment about the power and strength and reach of that network. I think it's important to note that again.
It is
That's all.
extremely important to note that for sure. Like, again, shout out to the Mass Maritime Network for that. Shout out to the school itself for that too, right? Just for preparing you. They certainly prepared to
Mhm.
get you to that point, right? Where as far as you're coming out of somewhere that is special and you're not going to get that anywhere else.
Right. Great. I do have one more clarifying question, like marine versus, shoreside, if you will. Like, what type of comparison would you draw between your experience when you're shipping? Obviously, you're in a contained like ship, but what are the other differences that are glaring for you, Paul? That maybe the audience could benefit knowing, like, especially maybe someone's considering jumping into a new career. Like, hey, do I go for marine? Do I go tenants? Right, real estate.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in my experience nowadays, I don't think you're going to see that as often as you may have, let's say 10 years ago. I think, you know, I think at Mass Maritime itself, the way it's kind of geared right now, it seems as though there's been a shift in terms of you're either kind of just going to do facilities, that from the beginning, and that's what you're going to do, versus somebody that says I'm going to ship out and then do facilities or whatever may be the case. I think that I'm one of the more rare ones that have done both aspects of it and successfully. I'm not sure, what the kind of pinpoint there, but it's definitely one of those things that I don't see it as often now, I guess,
Yep.
than when I had graduated, 21 years ago now, 22 years ago.
Got
So,
it.
I feel like there's more of it's one way or the other, and there's less of the marine engineering part, which is in a way kind of sad to me because I think you learn a lot of life lessons there. Especially you're not going to get a better experience than when you're on a ship There's, you can't call a vendor up in the middle of the ocean to come out and save you to bring out, that pump that you need, for example, that's not working. Like it's on you, and you got to figure out a way. And that's definitely the biggest difference that you're going to learn on the shipping side of it, or the marine engineering side of it, versus going facilities right out of school where you're used to just the way it is, and you have those things that you can lean on, people you can lean on, but you certainly don't have that when you're on a ship in the middle of the ocean and that engine breaks down.
Yep. Yeah.
It's on
That's
you. It's on you to get it going again, or the lights back on again. So
that definitely. Thank you. Thanks for expanding on it. And I don't know if do you know Laura Wilcox, the chief engineer of Patriot State at the Academy right now?
no, I don't.
Well, she said something similar when she was on the show. She's like, "Look,
Yeah.
you can't just run to Harbor Freight.
No,
There's no supply
not going to Home
house.
Depot either. Yep.
You're not going out. You need to make do with what you have." So that makes sense. So, Paul, what do you love most about your job, and why? Like, what do you really love about it?
Like I said, I definitely love the different challenge every day. That to me is just, it's always going to stick out.
Mhm.
The other thing I do love, again, the job is, like I said, it's a different challenge every day. There's always something to do. There's always something to manage. There's always people to interact with. But like right now, currently, I would just say like it's a comforting for me to come in every day, come to a beautiful office, beautiful building, sit down, have my coffee, just be relaxed before the day starts, and you just have that moment to like get ready for the day. Maybe not know what's coming, but certainly, start looking at emails. What do you need to respond to? What do I need to do that I didn't get to yesterday, which is very rare for me, but sometimes it happens.
Sure.
And then the people that I work with, they're all amazing. They really are.
Mhm.
Like there's a great atmosphere here, and compared to some of the other places I've been. But overall, generally speaking, I would just say it's just the job itself. Like in facilities, it changes day to day. Like I said before, like it doesn't matter
Right.
what job you're at, whether it's real estate or biotech, or even in an office building, right? Uh, every day is something. It's gonna be something different. It's never really. It's just never gets monotonous. So.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. And I heard you the first time. Just want to kind of go at that again and see if there was anything else there. A little
More
bit.
of a reiteration, but it's definitely, yeah, that's really it. I'll never complain about it.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So just one more question for you, Paul, before I ask a little bit about you. So say there's someone, well, it could be someone entering the workforce, or it could be someone in the workforce for years, but what advice would you give to someone in either situation, maybe someone who's looking to fill a role like you have now, or any advice you'd give to a colleague or someone leaving school going into the workforce?
Have a good mind about yourself and be on top of what you do. Try to be organized and have a good personality overall, because
Mm,
nobody's gonna want to really
mhm.
be working, let alone talking with somebody that may just be disgruntled for whatever reason, or
Mhm.
just not a happy person, or even just something little upsets them for that day. Like you got to leave some of that at the doorstep, and you got to
Yep.
understand the environment you're walking into, and just try to put that smile on your face, because it's not just about you, it's about the colleagues you're with and the people that are working around you.
Sure.
Will make it much more enjoyable for sure. Definitely, I would say like responsiveness too is definitely important. Like again, I think you heard me in there say earlier, Jay, like communication and everything. If you're a good communicator, especially in the facilities world, that is key. You know,
Hmm.
so
Absolutely. I'm going to speak to that for a second. Great advice for just about anybody, by the way. So thank you, Paul. As you know, we're in the service industry at Calutis here, and I remind myself and my colleagues all the time. It's like when you're in service, or anything really, if you're working on something for someone who requested it, a client or someone else, let them know that you're doing it. Don't do it in a void, because they like, be responsive, give updates. Hey, I don't have what you asked for yet, but this is what I do know. Just that, like, it really
that's a
landed for
great
me when
point,
you,
Jay. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great point. I actually recently I was talking to one of our very good vendors, and he always picks up the phone. He's like me, always picks up the phone, and he said, "I might not have an answer for you, Paul, but he's like, I was taught at a very young age, always answer the who you're servicing or who you're providing that, if it's a client or whoever it is, always answer. It doesn't matter if you're a vendor, it doesn't matter if you're myself, like." make sure you provide those updates, like you said, and being communicative. And that's, I'm with you on that one.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. I think it's just so critical.
Yeah. And you probably know that very well just from doing the sort of, like you said, doing what you do. So,
Yeah. It's like, well, I know I don't like waiting or like, I wonder if did he remember?
yeah.
Did he remember that I asked him that? I'm
I
not
hate
sure because I
bothering
haven't heard
people
anything.
again, but I will. To your point, I'll do it just like a couple days later. Hey, did you forget about that quote? Or we haven't heard from you in a while. I don't like doing it, but I'll do it because I sit there and say the same thing, Jay. Like, what are they
Yep.
doing? Do they not hear me? They ignore me? What's going on? So
Keep them updated, man. Keep them updated. All right. So that was awesome, by the way, that great walkthrough on the journey. And I can imagine anyone listening appreciated that. And maybe anyone who hasn't entered their career yet, be like, wow, okay, there's a path. Maybe I'll follow that one. So thank you, Paul.
yeah.
You mentioned your kids, you mentioned how important they are. And, before we close out, just a little bit about you. Like, what do you enjoy? Where do you live?
I live in Hanover. I've been
Okay.
there for 10 years. It's been a great run. Was in Braintree for 10 years before that. Also great. When my kids were born, we kind of outgrew the house we were in Braintree. My wife and I, and then that's how we end up in Hanover. We thought that was a great place for school systems, just for the town itself. And it's been a good run. My wife, she had unfortunately, she's recently out of work, which is okay. She'll find a way, but she had a great run for the last 10 years, had an amazing job. So has it been easy for both of us to be working with younger kids? No, certainly hasn't, but we found our way, and she wanted to do what she did. She didn't want to stop working when she had kids, and I totally understood for her career. So we decided that early on, and we made it work. And as far as like anything fun to do, I love baseball. I'm a softball player. On the weekends. I enjoy seeing my kids, growing up doing the things they do. I got one that's big in the fishing and music. That would be my son. And then I got my daughter who's big in the cheerleading and gymnastics. Love watching her compete. And then we just do a lot of family trips, just vacations. My wife's big on making those vacations. She does all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to do what we can as a family together, and of course with our surrounding friends and neighbors, and just try to go about every day being happy and thankful for what we have.
It sounds like a good balance to me, brother. Really good. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun too. Good for you. Well, I'll tell you, absolute pleasure. Like, this was an awesome conversation with you, Paul. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing everything that you did.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Jay, for having me.
Absolutely, man. And for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in again to Facility Rockstars. You can get the podcast at facilityrockstars.com, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get it, wherever you're listening right now. Until next time, this was another great show. So we'll catch you on the next one. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.